Okay, so I want to show you Bakin Pack 3. It's pretty much ready to go. I'm going to package it up tonight and get it over on itch.io. But what I've done is I've added to it 3 types of buildings. So first we've got the brownstone style building here. Just going to zoom this in a bit. And what I've got is a bunch of different door and window combinations, so you can build pretty much any type of building you like to. Out of those combinations, you've got a bunch of different doors. You've got residential windows, you've got commercial windows, you've got 3 different types of doors, and you've got solid brick walls. If I zoom in here, you can see the quality of the bricks and the windows and everything. You could totally use these as your main assets in RGP Developer Bakin. You could build a town out of them, although that's not what they're designed for. They're designed for backfill buildings. So you've got a city, and maybe you've got an area, say like right now, I'll just say I'm hovering over this grid. So that yellow blinky cursor area, say that's the center of your city. And then you've got an area that comes out like this around it. So in that center area, you would have your actual city building models and stuff, and or maybe your park space or whatever you want to do. And then you use these assets to fill out the surrounding area on the outskirts so that you don't see the end of the map, and that you've got a bunch of variety buildings as place fillers that have very low polygon count and don't use up a whole bunch of resources to render on screen. So that's the idea behind them. Now, there's 3 different ones, so you totally could use them to fill out whatever you want. So you've got the brownstone, then you've got more of a residential with a commercial underneath, and then moving past that, you've got the office tower style buildings, where you can build a bunch of different buildings there. Then moving on from that, I'll come back to these other assets in a minute, but we've got just some old damaged walls. So what you've got here is some plastered walls with some damaged patchwork on them, and then corrugated roofing in 3 different styles. So you've got the really heavy patchwork corrugated roofing with the kind of the white light gray wall. Then you've got the camo military with the light green, and then you've got the not so in bad shape with just the kind of the tan or light terracotta rosy colored walls. So it gives you a variety. You can do this for dungeons, surrounding walls, shed buildings. I don't have any windows or doors made for those. However, they were just kind of designed as placeholder fillers off in the distance again, but you could totally use them like in a training round, a maze. You could use them in a post-apocalyptic world as old building ruins, and you're hopping, from rooftop to rooftop or whatever, right? There's probably 100 different uses for them. Moving on from that, now we're going to move over here to these other 2 terrain tiles I've made. So this is a green techie terrain, and a pink techie terrain. I said in Bakin Pack 1 that I would like to add some additional technology terrains a little further on, and so here we are now at Bakin Pack 2, and I thought I would add some animated terrains. Now I've tested these with the Bakin Pack 1 terrains, and they go really nice with the metal techie walls, especially if you're doing like a ceiling or a floor or just a computer whatever in the middle of, right? Like they integrate pretty well as some complexity to the environment. So, and moving on from that, what I've got here is I have the I used this, it's scaled down here, but this is just a big tree with a ramp that curls all around the outside of it and winds up to the top, so that your player character can wind around, go up top, and then do something at the top here, right? I've also made it so that this tree stump has the same texture and could easily be placed and integrated out of the top. There's a lot of things you could do there. Now, that being said, this is the asset that you import, and you would just copy it and use from this asset's texture file to create a second variety here. You would just assign that, you would just copy this and then assign the same texture this one has. So that's how you come up with that extra texture. And that'll be in the instructions, but it's pretty common knowledge how to do that with models and just add a different texture to make a duplicate of it. But I thought that I would let you know that because that turns out really well. Like that's a nice looking oak tree texture there, and then that's a nice looking like cedar or maybe I don't know, a walnut or some other exotic coca-cola maybe. I don't know. Anyway, so then you get these two, or one that you duplicate, make another texture of, and I adjust them up here, but they pretty much come just as a cradle. So what I'm going to do is just take this asset. This is just one of the stock trees from RGP Developer Bakin, one of the better looking ones, and I'll just move it up. So I've left them with that cradle there so that you could use it, either put your own treetop type on top, make your own canopy, or put a little house on it, or like I've demonstrated over here, I just put a big boulder on it, and then I put a little door here and a mushroom on the front. And then this is a boulder that I'm adding in this pack, and this mushroom pack and this door are just stock assets in RGP Developer Bakin, and you can see they look pretty good there. So you can make some pretty neat assets using that. Now back over to the boulder. So these boulders, here's what they look like just brought in native. This one's a lot smaller than these ones. It's just the scale that I rendered it out at, so you can scale things as you want and adjust the UV mapping. There's a gray boulder and a red boulder, and that's their default shapes. And you can see here, this is no longer in the default shape. And if I come over to here, you can see that mossy one is no longer in the default shape, and the gray one is no longer in the default shape. Let me just try and zoom around here. And so what I've done is just try to put these in place. So right here in the middle, this is a mesh that I used in Ash's Game Jam. I built this for Ash's Game Jam to be a sandy beach. I had made this one and a mud one. And I decided, well, if you're making a park in the city, it would be nice to have like a sand pit you could scale up or down for the kids to play in or whatever. So that's what I've done here, is I just put that in as a sand pit. It is just a 3D mesh. You import it in, the texture's baked. And like most of the objects, the textures are baked in as FBX files. And you just import them in, and I've already tried to scale them to be appropriately usable in the engine. But that brings us over here to this tree. This tree is a free asset I'm throwing in to this asset pack. It is from the Tree It, and it's one of my early experiments in making a tree. As you can see, it's really good. I've removed the normal maps, the transition maps, the roughness map, all that, and I've just exported the flat textures. And it doesn't bake the textures in. Now I could bring them into Blender and export them that way, but I'm just including the textures in the file, and RGP Developer Bakin finds them just fine. So this is just kind of a decorative, like I don't know, like a beech tree or an elm tree or something. I just kind of grabbed some random parts and was playing. I don't even know what I used to make it. But I thought it would be perfect park tree if you're building a city park, and it would look well in the city park mode. That brings us to these grasses. So what I've got here, I'm just going to actually game definition, start rules, and I'm good to go. Okay, perfect. All right. I just want to show you the one thing you can do with these rocks. So if you scale them and they don't look right, what you can do is you can go into resources, and you can go into the materials. And here's a material, red rock selected. And all you need to do is change these X and Y scales to be whatever you want. I'm going to drop this one down just a bit. And the X and Y, that I'm going to go to 3. And now that's going to change on screen. It just updated and it shifted it around. It actually probably looks a little better, a little less uniform. So that's all you need to do if you scale them and you're finding that you don't like how the texture fits. Like say you're making a great big huge red rock cliff face stick out in the desert or something, or a big mossy rock in the middle of a jungle or a creek. That's how you would adjust those, and I recommend doing that with those. You can do it with the trees, you can do it with whatever textures you want. It's just a neat little trick to know. Now I'm going to jump into the game here, and I'm just going to show you how I dressed up a couple of these and show you the last couple of textures in engine here. So I'm going to run over here. So we'll start here, and you can see what I've done here is I've just added these are the stock weed assets, and this is the stock dead grass assets, and I've added them to this animated yellow kind of wheat back and forth. Lots of motion because I wanted to make sure that it, you know, it looked like it was actually active. Now you put more of these grass and wheat things on here and maybe add more to their animation rate to match. But I just slapped them in, and I also threw the gray rock in place here just to show how it fits into how it could fit into a scene nice in the middle of a field or something. And then you zoom out just a little bit. It's good. Now the only thing with this rock, you can see what I was just talking about with the UV mapping. Like, I don't like how that UV map sits there, so ideally I would go in and I would adjust that and I would scale it more appropriately to match that mesh properly. Like the red one, if you look over here, especially what I just did with the red one, it looks pretty good up there. It's got a nice mesh. Well, you can't really see it there, but so the next grass is this green animated grass. And you can see it moving back and forth quite a bit. And you can also see that it meshes pretty well with the edge of this particular tile set. Now this tile set's part of the RGP Developer Bakin. It's just a stock cobblestone one that they have. But you can see how this animated mesh works well with it. Now if I step forward a bit more, you can see this other animated mesh. And it's just moving a little bit here. Just barely moving. You can use that as like a shorter version. They blend pretty good. There is a little bit of an edge to them because they are slightly different colors and slightly different patterns. So that does, but as you zoom out, it gets less and less noticeable. With that being said, you know, different terrains for different areas. But that's a really good park terrain. Like that just lines up pretty nicely, and it could be a park terrain. You get a good view of that bark there, and then that brings me over to this. I just want to walk over this way and show you how I've used the brown with mossy stone, put it up against this trunk here, added some daisies, added some other flower colors, and put in some fiddleheads there to kind of make it blend into the environment. So, you know, it all works pretty good here. And zoom out a little bit, zoom out a lot, and that is Bakin Pack 3 and a couple of tricks just to streamline your assets. And you can do that for any assets, by the way, the UV mapping textures and stuff. So what I want to do though, just right before I sign off, I just want to go to resources. I want to find that gray, where is it here? Gray rock texture pattern. And I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just go to this one, and I'm going to go 6. I'm going to leave that at 4. I'm going to go OK, and I'm just going to jump back into the engine and see if that made a difference for me. Again, you just got to play around a little bit and see what's what. Oh yeah, that looks better already. Still use a little bit more offsetting, but you can see that looks a lot better. Really mixes up the pattern. Anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it for tonight. So this is Bakin Pack 3, and it will be available on my itch.io page. It'll probably be priced the same as Bakin Pack 1. Bakin Pack 2 had a lot more content to it, so this one will be cheaper, but it will be available either today or tomorrow. Have a great day. See you in the next one.